Behold how good it is, and how pleasant when brethren dwell in unity.
We are nearing the end of our year-long Torah reading cycle. We started in Genesis last October, and over the last 10 months we have worked our way through Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and now we only have about 12 chapters left in Deuteronomy. This week's Torah portion covers Deuteronomy 21:10 to 25:19. The entire section reads like a long list of instructions for once the Israelites enter the land. There are over 70 miscellaneous precepts in the 4.5 chapters. That puts this week's portion in first place for the highest number of commands in any weekly reading. The structure of the laws list seemed to be random. As you read, the text jumps from rules of war to family inheritance to animal rights to marriage laws. A significant percentage of the laws relate to the upstart nation's public health policies, agricultural standards, and financial guidelines. However, there are some laws that clearly are calling the Israelite nation to a much higher ethical order than any of the other ancient peoples. It is these laws that I find extra intriguing. I want to focus on Deuteronomy 24. In this chapter, God commands, "Do not take advantage of a hired worker who is poor and needy, whether that worker is a fellow Israelite or a foreigner residing in one of your towns. Pay them their wages each day before sunset, because they are poor and counting on it. Otherwise, they may cry to the Lord against you, and you will be guilty of sin." The Hebrew word used here for cry is kara. It is the same word used in certain psalms of the ascent when the pilgrim cries out to God. But the idea of the poor crying out for justice is a well-known and reiterated idea in the Bible. In the story of Sodom and Gomorrah, for example, the outcries of the weak reach a more desperate pitch. The Bible has a more severe word for cry out than kara. It's tza'ak. Nahum Sarna, author of Understanding Genesis, defines the Hebrew tza'ak as the anguished cry of the oppressed, the agonized plea of the victim for help in some great injustice. This is one of those times that the English undermines the Hebrew. Outcry hardly has the same moral outrage as tza'ak. Anytime the outcry of the vulnerable, the poor, the orphan, the widow, or the foreigner reaches God's ears, he is compelled to radical action. Ezekiel 16 relates that one reason Sodom was so severely punished for her sins was because the powerful severely oppressed the needy. God destroyed Sodom and Gomorrah when the outcry became so great. When the Hebrews' backbreaking suffering in Egypt reached a certain level, they cried out, tza'ak, and God heeded their cry and punished their Egyptian masters. Over and over in the Torah, God reminds the Israelites that they must do justice and take care of the most vulnerable because they were once slaves in Egypt as well and were redeemed by the hand of the Lord. If they fail to protect the weak and the outcries of the poor and vulnerable reach God's ears, Exodus 22 promises that God's anger will blaze forth. Isaiah, living in the days before exile, warned in his 5th chapter that when God looked for justice, he beheld bloodshed, and when he looked for righteousness, he beheld an outcry, a tza'ak. In Nahum Sarna's commentary on Genesis, he points out that in the greatest moments of destruction, the flood, Sodom and Gomorrah, and later the Babylonian exile, the main line of offense that God repeats is the oppression of the weak. It comes up more than idolatry. It comes up more than any ritual or sacrificial failures. God demands justice. He expects it. And his most severe punishments come when the outcry of the vulnerable reaches his ears and he intervenes on their behalf. Every time it is a dramatic intervention. But if the Israelites follow the moral code laid out in Deuteronomy, if they do not over-harvest their wheat fields but leave some for the poor to glean, if they do not overpick their olive trees but leave plenty for the poor to share, if they do not keep the cloak of a widow in debt but have compassion on her plight, then the kara, or the tza'ak, the outcry, will not reach the ears of God. He will not be compelled to dramatic action and consequences. They will live and they will thrive in the land, and all will be well with them. Deuteronomy was revolutionary. And by the way, so was the book of James. Take what I have said here and go read James 5. That's your Shabbat homework. Shabbat Shalom.
Behold how good it is, and how pleasant when brethren dwell